Viewers, welcome to this very special broadcast. Bharat, that is India, is marking its 77th birth anniversary. On this momentous stroke of the midnight hour, 77 years ago, Nehru spelt out his vision for the nation's trajectory, its destiny. His peerless tryst with destiny speech gave the people a shared sense of purpose and an identity. And it won't be an exaggeration to say that we, the people, have done ourselves proud. Indeed, these last 77 years, we've cradled our democracy. We've nurtured it. We've nursed it. We've held it close to our hearts, to our bosom. But even when it slipped out of our grasp, we successfully battled against its desecrators. This is in sharp contrast to all our immediate neighbors who also awoke to life and freedom around this time 77 years ago. Pakistan and Bangladesh have kept their tryst with democracy more in the exception. Sri Lanka is dysfunction and together with Maldives is in danger of being reduced to a hyper-leveraged Chinese client state. Nepal and Afghanistan? Well, the less said about them, the better. But circling back to Bharat, which today stands at an epoch-defining crossroad, a fateful point of inflection, is being steered by Narendra Modi towards, quote, Vishwa Guru, unquote, status in a time being described as, quote, Amrit Kal, unquote. Like Nehru, who charted progress as a series of 5-year plans, the equally electorally successful Gujarat-born Narendra Damodar Das Modi has outlined his vision in 5 vows or Panch Prans for propelling India towards greatness. The question now is, can we get there? And perhaps more pertinently, are we equipped to get there? Let's speak to our guest today to get a sense of whether Vishwa Guru status is within our reach. Let me begin on this momentous occasion with Pawan Verma. Mr. Verma, for each and every citizen to be carried along on this beckoning tryst with destiny, the state needs to be highly responsive to the citizenry's aspirations, their needs. And that can only be possible when democracy is truly representative. So, I want to ask you, how representative is Indian democracy?
A very happy Independence Day, Rahul, to you and your viewers and my panelists. Let me say that after 7 decades and more of independence, there are many achievements that India needs to be proud of. The first, as you mentioned, is the fact that in spite of the Cassandras in 1947, who predicted that democracy will not survive in India, it not only has, but has flourished. And except for the short interim period of the emergency, we have been a democracy. Democracy is ingrained in the spirit and soil of our people, and I don't believe there is any threat to it. Secondly, in my view, one of the great achievements of India in all these decades has been the fact that with the retention of democracy, we've managed some level of economic growth so that the watermark of hope in terms of the future is always above the line of despair. It's not an easy achievement given the kind of poverty and deprivation we inherited in 1947. Thirdly, let me say that one of our great achievements has been the unity of the country. Thus far, in spite of the superficial differences that constitute Bharat of language, cuisine, culture, satire, attire, etc., no secessionist movement has succeeded against the Union of India. They have all been co-opted finally within the framework of democracy. We have also made cutting-edge changes in the areas of science and technology. But having said some of these things, there are some areas where we need, I believe in my opening statement, to just flag. The first is democracy itself. We need to improve on the apparatus of democracy in terms of a level playing field, in terms of eliminating the use of unaccountable money, in terms of the use of caste and religion in politics, and in terms of dynastic fiefdoms, where frankly the fact that they exist is antithetical to the democratic principle. These are areas which we need to look upon, and indeed the functioning of Parliament, where we have not had a single day almost when Parliament is not adjourned. These are things that we need to look at. The second point is that our society, our economy has grown, and we are the fastest growing economy in the world today, which is a matter of pride, but the dividends of economic growth are extremely unequally divided. And so we have the world's third largest number of billionaires and still the largest number of the unacceptably poor. We have to bridge this gap. Thirdly, I think that we have to persevere to retain the unity of the country, which is by preventing divisiveness and retaining the sense of all Indians belonging to this, with pride to this independent India.
I'll bring in, of course, Mr. Gurcharan Das in just a few moments to take up on that question that you've left hanging in some senses, Pawan Verma, on whether we are on the right path to collective prosperity, because that is also, of course, very important to create a stable nation. But another strand that we must explore with Dr. Ranganathan is one that I think Dr. Verma, Mr. Verma just sort of touched upon, which is this schizophrenia between what are we when it comes to defining ourselves. Bharat, India, civilizational state, modern, this, that, the other. So I want to bring you in here. A nation, as you know, can only imagine itself in the future if it can define itself today. Dr. Ranganathan, have we fixed upon a definition of who we are in the larger world?
Hello, Rahul, and my very best wishes to all our countrymen and women on this fantastic occasion of Independence Day, and to my fellow panelists. It's been a lovely discussion thus far, and it promises to be, of course, an even more lovelier discussion. I'm very eager to hear the views of one of our panelists, Mr. Gurcharan Das, who was 5 years old when we got our independence. So he is the one who can actually tell, maybe if he remembers, recollects that amazing day, 15th August 1947.
Don't date the young man, Dr. Ranganathan. Don't date him, please.
I was about to say he looks half that age. So
he wrote a beautiful autobiography called Another Sort of Freedom. So indeed, absolutely, he is very well conversant with the way we've sort of shaped. Yes, Dr. Ranganathan, I won't stand in your way. Yeah.
Yes, I was going to say, I was going to possibly pick up from where Mr. Verma left off. Are we a success story? By all accounts, yes, there is no doubt about it. But have we pigeonholed ourselves? Were we in the right direction? Yes. But did we choose an arduous path? Yes. Let me elaborate on what I mean by a success story. You know, if you look at few basic parameters, it will be very clear. In 1947, when we got our independence, our literacy rate was 12%. Today it is 86%. Our life expectancy in 1947 was 32 years. Today it is 70 years. Our poverty rate was 71%. Today it is 4.5%. And the most troubling data of all was that in 1947, our infant mortality rate was upwards of 160. That means out of every 1,000 babies born, 160 did not live to see 1 year. Today it is 24. So yes, broadly speaking, we've been a success story. Did we choose an arduous path? Most certainly we did. And here I don't want to put more than what is required on this wonderful occasion, blame on our founding forefathers. But yes, Mr. Nehru must take the blame, as he must take the credit for pushing us towards a republic that has still stood the test of time. The First Amendment of America was to protect free speech. Our First Amendment was to severely curtail free speech, courtesy Nehru. Editors were jailed, books were banned, films were banned, people were arrested left, right, and center. That is when the founding republic should have been at the altar of complete freedom of speech and expression to give strength to the nation. Mr. Nehru chose socialism. He said, quote, profit is a dirty word, and socialism was later on inserted in our preamble of the Constitution. We chose an arduous path. We've got there at inflection points, but again, the point is, are we speeding towards what every one of us would like to be, a developed country? I'm afraid not, because yes, our GDP might be upwards of $3 trillion, but what matters as in population is not population, but population density. Rahul, what matters is not GDP per capita. So even though our parameters broadly look good, we still have GDP per capita of $2,500. We are ranked 136th amongst all the nations of the world, behind Sri Lanka and till a week ago behind Bangladesh, although I don't know what that situation might be. We still have 300 million Indians living on 60 rupees a day. We still have 150 million children out of school. We still have 8 million children as child labor, 18 million Indians as bonded laborers, 50 million cases pending in the courts. I can go on and on. This is not about glass being half empty or half full. The point is, going forward, do we have the strength to take the right decisions? And I'm afraid, again, I don't want to sound despondent, but by the looks of it, the last 5 to 10 years, I'm afraid we just don't. I think we have become somehow a nation that is prisoner of vote bank. The farm laws that were repealed are a shining beacon of this, something that would have catapulted us to middle income economy, something that, as Pawan Verma ji rightly said, 44% of our 600 million strong labor force is involved in a sector that contributes only 14% to the GDP, and this would have changed all that, especially when all those 3 farm laws were almost verbatim in the manifesto of all opposition parties. But the moment Bondi brought it on, everyone started saying these are black laws. So we are not there to make the hard decisions, Rahul, and that is the problem.
Are we on the right path to collective prosperity? Is there hope?
Well, you know, I instead of talking about inequality, I think we should talk about opportunity, because that's what creates ultimately a prosperous society, opportunity. And so I don't mind that we have so many billionaires. At our stage in our development, all countries have gone through this. What is important is jobs, and it is a job ultimately that gives you dignity and freedom. Since we are on Independence Day, let's talk about freedom. And Mr. Ranganathan reminded me about when I was 5 years old, and when I was growing up, India was admired for its robust liberal democracy, but it was pitied for its socialist illiberal economy. And so we gave an enormous amount of political, religious, social freedom, but we withheld economic freedom, which we finally got in 1991. Anyway, that's an old story. Let's go to today. Today, over the last 30 years since 91, We have grown at 6% a year. We have become the fastest growing economy. All these are good things. And this also means that we have the preconditions to create an industrial revolution. The reality is where we have failed since 91 is that and this has been pointed out both by Mr. Ranganathan and Pawan Verma, that manufacturing has failed us. Especially the biggest statistic of that failure is that India's share is less than 2% of world exports of manufactured goods. World's manufactured goods are worth $27 trillion. Imagine what an additional 1% would do for us. But more than that, what it will do to jobs. So how to create these jobs is really the challenge for that 2047 objective that we are all looking forward to. And there are certain myths that we have to break. One myth is, but we can do it ourselves. We are a big domestic market. Well, the reality is we are a big country in population, but our market is small. And we have a lot of poor people, as we have just been reminded. So the answer to that is not to say that we have a big market, we are doing it ourselves, but is to link ourselves with the global economy. Every single country that went from poverty to prosperity to becoming middle class did it through exports, and the latest examples is China, but also all the Asian tigers who did it through the export of labor-intensive manufacturers. Now, how do we do that? We don't do that by our obsession with SMEs, etc. The answer is, actually, we have in all these PLI schemes that we have tried, and this has been a good effort, but it's been a patchy, the record is mixed. But what we can learn from is that at least one of these schemes has been a success, which can be the model for the future. And that is the cell phone scheme, where Apple came in to set up an alternative facility to the one in China. And in a very quick time, it has resulted in the export of $10 billion worth of cell phones. And this is only 14%. India's production is only 14% of the global production of cell phones. And JP Morgan projects that by 2026, India will have 26 to 30% of that. But more important, it has created 150,000 direct jobs, and 70% of these are women. And in addition, there have been 450,000 indirect jobs. So imagine 6 lakh jobs have been created just in this one scheme in such a quick time.
Okay, we've got Gurcharan Das giving us a bit of a blueprint there. Justice is the cornerstone of all democracies, unarguably, Sanjay Hegde. The lack of justice has derailed nations, rendered them dysfunctional. Is India now well clear of this trajectory?
Well, I'm reminded of what Dr. Ambedkar said in his last speech to the Constituent Assembly. And if you allow me to quote,
of course,
political democracy cannot last unless there lies at the base of it social democracy. What does social democracy mean? It means a way of life which recognizes liberty, equality, and fraternity as the principles of life. And without equality, liberty would produce the supremacy of the few over the many. Without fraternity, liberty would produce the supremacy of the few over the many. And without fraternity, liberty, and equality could not become a natural course of things. It would require a constable to enforce them. Our problem really at the heart of our democracy is that while we gained independence from the British in 1947, have we really created free men and women within India? Are you free to think what you think is right? Are you free to eat what you want? Are you free to profess any religion without necessarily being at the receiving end of a mob or anything like that. So there are several things, and primarily it is our belief that everything is dependent on my baap, on the state. We have become not free men and women, not free citizens, not equal citizens, but we have become subjects of this Grangutan kind of enterprise. We have, of course, the right every 5 years to elect who will lead us. But our democracy, or our idea of democracy, often ends up at the voting booth and in a game of numbers. Who has the numbers? How do you get bigger numbers except by allowing X, Y to the detriment of A and B? That is not exactly the democracy which was envisioned by our founding fathers. We have concentrated, and correctly so, we have concentrated a lot on economics. But I do not see the past 75 years as having thrown a social reformer of the Ambedkar kind. I have not seen anybody who says that, look, if you have to progress as a country, you need to progress in human thought, in terms of equality, in terms of liberty, in terms of fraternity. That is what is missing. We are all, Pawan is here, Mr. Gurcharan Das is here, Anand is here. All of us tend to be maybe writers, voices in the woods, as it were. But there has never been a concentrated social movement which eschews many of the things that divide us. The Prime Minister started off his Prime Ministership with a very good thing. He said Swachh Bharat. I don't hear about it. And why do we not achieve Swachh Bharat? Primarily because we as a society are accustomed to other people dealing with the dirt that we leave behind.
That's right.
That kind of social reformation has to precede anything else on our next wave of independence. We do not have an Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. We do not have a Ram Mohan Roy. We do not have, so far, we haven't shown proof of a vast majority of middle India accepting that, look, these are the things that we need to work on mentally before we get into the other stuff, or simultaneously with.
Some of the greats who have been awarded Bharat Ratnas in this long 77-year journey, who champion social justice, might be feeling slightly aggrieved today, Sanjay Hegde. But nonetheless, I think we've had an interesting discussion, viewers. This can go on for hours, I can tell you this. And perhaps I will engage them on a forthcoming podcast very soon. All these four voices, perhaps at length for a couple of hours. I think to take away, we need to focus now for the next 30, 40 years till 2047 on the apparatus of democracy, as Pawan Verma seemed to suggest. Perhaps that's where we need to focus. I'll leave it at this, viewers. It's been wonderful talking to you, interacting with all of you.